You're joined by, of course, myself, Lawson, and we are going to jump into an interview this morning with Noah Roet from Voice of the Martyrs on, I guess, one of the central figures and founders of Voice of the Martyrs, none other than Richard Wurmbrand. We're going to get into his story. Noah, are you there with us? Doesn't seem like he's coming through on the line. We'll just make some quick technical adjustments here. Hey, Noah, are you there with us?
I am.
Awesome. Hey, well, we are going to be getting into the Richard Wurmbrand story. Now, where I want to start this is I want to start from the end and then jump back to the beginning, which is, well, what is Richard Wurmbrand, in terms of Voice of the Martyrs as an organization, what is he to you guys today?
Well, he was our founder, and basically we always go back to the vision that he had, and that was to be a voice for the persecuted. He was clearly he was persecuted in the communist world, and so that's where we kind of started to actually get the word out to other nations that this is what's happening to Christians in the communist world. And then as he was getting older, clearly he was seeing more persecution from the Islamic world and even from the secular world. So we evolved with him until when he passed in 2001, we continued that legacy.
Wow, incredible stuff. Now, I have been fortunate enough to read the book Tortured for Christ and to see two of the movies as well. I saw the original Tortured for Christ as well as the preview for Tortured to Christ 2, which outlines his story. Where does it start?
Oh, well, he was a Jewish Romanian, and he didn't know anything about Christ. He was like a secular Jew, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
But then World War II was approaching, and look, he just, it's interesting because a man, I think his name was Christian Folks. He lived in a village in the Romanian highlands. Now Richard Wurmbrand was sick, and he was sent to the highlands, and this Christian Folks, his name was, said he prayed to God that he would be able to convert a Jew. Excuse me. And that was just amazing how Richard ended up in this man's house, and he was converted to Christianity. So that was pretty wild. And then from that point, he just gave his whole heart and soul to the Lord. But the challenge was, and he did get in trouble during the Nazi occupation. Mm-hmm. He was sent to jail, and his wife was also, she converted. And so he became quite the minister in Romania. Quite well known because, back then evangelical pastors were pretty rare. But it was really after World War II that things got really ugly for him. Sure. The challenge he had was all the other churches in the area, predominantly Catholic and Orthodox, and all the other churches, including some evangelical ones, they all said, we will follow the Stalin style of church.
Yeah, wow.
And they said, we will work with Stalin. We will work with the government. And we still see that today in China and other countries where they have these kind of government-sanctioned churches.
Yeah.
And so he said no. In fact, it was in that movie you would have seen, and in the book, his wife actually tapped him and said, basically said, are you going to be a man or a mouse? Get up there and tell him that you're going to stand firm. And from that day, he was a marked man.
That's incredible. Considering his story as well and his background too, I was fortunate enough to do some, extracurricular reading on Richard Wurmbrand as well. He was originally, drinking the sauce, you could say. He studied Marxism in Moscow, like he was in that, but as you've outlined there, he had an incredible conversion experience. Now he's doing his work as a pastor. He's sharing the gospel with people. Post World War II, obviously the Nazi regime falls. But we see that communism and Stalinism continues on strong. How did that affect Richard Wurmbrand?
Yeah, well, he had to start. I mean, this is almost the start of the modern day underground church. He had to start preaching in sort of, I guess, in a clandestine way. He had to run small groups. because remember, he was dealing with many people who were born in Romania who were born either Catholic or Orthodox.
Sure.
So that was his harvest. And so he brought those people across. And also there were many people who weren't of any religion. And so he did that hard work, but eventually he knew that he was going to get caught out. We have a lot of surveillance these days. Everywhere we go, we're being watched, right? But back then, you could get away with this for a lot longer. The soldiers, the Russian soldiers or the Soviet soldiers who went to these countries weren't quite as, vigilant as some. Although once they caught you, you're in big trouble. Romanian jail cells weren't what they may be today. And so he was eventually caught. And he spent 2 terms in prison of a total of 14 years, and the stories are horrendous.
So, and I pick up what you're saying there in terms of, when you have people like the soldiers that occupy the country rather than the ones that are on the front line are usually, the B graders or the C graders that are just kind of looking after things. But they eventually get him. He spends, as you said, 14 years in prison. What did that look like? Was it, 3 square meals a day and chilling in the cell, or?
Yeah, well, not quite. The food was scarce. The solitary confinement was awful.
Wow.
There was no air conditioning or anything like that. So Romania, if anyone knows that area, it gets very, very cold and very, very hot actually in summer.
Yes.
So, just awful conditions. A lot of Christians were imprisoned at that time. And he sort of formed a bit of a group there, but he shares of the suffering that they all went through. Many of them died, through torture. They just wanted them basically. They would allow them to leave or have better privileges if they would just squeal, in modern day language. If they squealed on fellow Christians, and Richard and his brothers in prison would not do that.
Wow.
They would not. And so they suffered horrendous torture. And if you've read, like you said, you've read the book, the torture, I think that, of his feet. So they'd sit him back and his feet would be up and they would just cane his feet. And it's funny, it's something that we don't hear a lot about, but just a horrendous pain he would talk about. And so they obviously knew how to sort of try to get to him, but he wouldn't, budge, and he would just praise the Lord. And I guess he found his true, deep reliance on the Lord in prison. And, after he was let go, he could never walk properly again. He suffered tremendously. They couldn't get medical assistance in there as well, into the prisons. That's why we have something called Vom Medical, because today, so many places in the world, they won't get treated because they're Christians. And so it's just awful. And the same thing was happening then. So nearly all our programs are based on the experience that Richard had.
Wow. Incredible. So he goes through quite a bit. How does he end up getting out of this? I'd imagine a lot of political prisoners like this, and you can see this in the modern day, end up just staying in jail indefinitely.
Sure.
Where, especially while the regime is still in power, and we know that during this time, communism and the Soviet Union was very much in power. How did he get out?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He was actually quite happy to stay in Romania, but what happened was because all he cared about was preaching to his fellow prisoners, and then preaching in Romania. That was his heart. That was his soul, and so. What happened was basically he served his term and they had no more reason to actually keep him there. But his story was getting out. He was one of the few survivors of what they went through, and his story started getting out. And so I believe it was the Swiss or the Swedish. Hey, we always get those two mixed up. And even this morning I'm getting them mixed up. I think it was the Swiss. They actually, the government there said, look, we're going to get you out of there, but you have to come to Switzerland.
Yes.
So that's what eventually happened. He actually sort of originally said, no, I want to stay in Romania, but there was just no way he could do that.
Sure.
So he then got the government of Switzerland, and well, not so much the government, but also Christian groups. Particularly, he was a Lutheran, so I guess you had the German speaking Christians of great faith. All those kind of groups helped get him out of there. And then he decided, well, I'm out now. I can't preach anymore in Romania. I'm going to tell the world about my story, and I'm going to create this ministry called Voice of the Martyrs.
Voice of the Martyrs. Wow, that's incredible. Getting out of prison and founding Voice of the Martyrs, what did his work look like? You know, because he would go on for some decades, sharing and traveling and yeah,
he just he went to Congress in America, and there are photos of that even today. I'm sure there may even be a little video of that. You can check our YouTube out, Voice of the Martyrs Australia, or, and links to that. And he would show in Congress. He showed all the wounds that he had, and at that time, it was remarkable. They'd never seen anything like it, and they had no idea. The West had no idea, and so he realised straight away, wow, I need to get this message out. So it was actually some people in Australia who, from the Bible Society, they just basically wrote a letter to him. You couldn't ring him or WhatsApp him back then.
Sure.
And so he came to Australia, and he just travelled the world showing his scars, sharing his story. And like a little outpost like Australia back then, it was something they'd never seen before. It was just so foreign to them. And he realised we have to have this message constantly going out of what's happening to our brothers and sisters around the world. Otherwise, we're never going to get the message. So even though we have social media and everything today, right, like we're tapped into everything, the message is still hard to get out to Christians of all denominations in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think what we can see here is such a powerful story, has affected so many lives. And I think this is the thing that Richard relied on, and that we could probably rely on today, right? Is the power of the Holy Spirit to carry our voices into these areas and into these places. I'm just having a look here. I'm on the Richard Wurmbrand Wikipedia page and just, having a look at some of the achievements and influences and whatnot. And I've seen here in 2006, he was voted fifth among the greatest Romanians of all time. So that was after his death, which is amazing. Yes. So we can see that internationally, and even back in his own country in Romania, despite being forced to leave, he's now has a cultural legacy there that's long lasting. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, he has a huge name in Romania. In fact, I met up with the people who filmed Tortured for Christ.
Yeah.
And what they found was, when they actually filmed it on set, and the Sabina movie as well. When they went to Romania and looked for actors, he's so famous there that all the actors put their hand up. All the best actors said, "Hey, I'll do it." So it didn't matter that he was a Christian or anything like that. He was so renowned, and that was such an honor for any actor in Romania to do it, which made it easier for the team that did the movie, because it was like, wow, I can have our choice of actors. And that's why they found someone who really looked like him, and also Sabina. So I'd encourage people, if they haven't seen the movie, either check it out on YouTube. If you find it hard to find, just go to our app, Voice of the Martyrs Australia app, and I believe you can download those videos, including Sabina. That's the follow-up movie.
Yes.
Which is probably even more powerful. Mm-hmm. It's about his wife and what she had to do and how she had to forgive. It's quite powerful.
Powerful stuff. I just want to ask, we've got about 30 seconds left. How is it that we could support Richard Wurmbrand's legacy today and support Christians who are going through persecution? Yeah,
sure. The easiest way is to actually go with the app, Voice of the Martyrs Australia. Just get the app store, Apple Store. And then also our website, vom.com.au. Everything's there. We've got a huge upgrade happening right in the middle of it now.
Yeah, wow.
Just to make it a bit easier to sort of navigate. But yeah, just go to news and just look at what we are like a news agency, but we're here to share the news. We are the voice. And so that's what the main thing is. That's what we want, number one. Obviously, subscriptions are important and donations, but subscriptions are important so people can continue to get the news. So we actually have a weekly email as well.
Awesome. All of this coming out and amazing work that you guys are doing. Good on you, Noah, and fantastic work supporting those, not only leaving a legacy to share with the world of what God has done through, heavy persecution, but also supporting those who are going through it today.